that are taking place. So what happens, I'll take for example, the one that is very closest to my heart is my mother's province in Dawah Sound, where about 10 years ago, a stone quarry was set up there to extract gravel and stones from the river. And the impact of that is enormous. So I've just tried to make some linkages here. So once you remove the stones from the river, then two things happen. One, the riverbed drops. When the river bed drops, also the water level drops. Actually, the river dries up. So automatically that kills all the fish, eels, prawns, and other creatures that live along the river. Following from that, then you have no rocks to hold on to the soil. So the soil then gets easily washed down the river, down to the coast. As the soil enters the coast, then it covers the shore, the mangrove and then the coral. And that also disturbs the ecosystem in the shore and around the reef, where fish, crabs, and many other creatures depend on the mangrove ecosystem, the sand. You know, if you walk around the seashore there, you are walking into like knee-high silt or soil, which should be sand. So that's a big disturbance of the ecosystem. The coral, fish live around the coral, and when that's covered with soil, then the fish have to move somewhere else. And now the women that depend on providing food for their children by just fishing offshore cannot catch any more fish there. They have to get on a boat and go far out into the sea, or move upshore, downshore, where there is no soil covering that thing. So that's and then there's soil erosion on the river banks, and there's a whole lot of things. Okay, there's two impacts of that on the physical environment, but also on the social environment. There are some people in the village that agreed to the company. Of course, they were given some money. And then there are people who disagree. So that too causes a division, a split in families. So in this case, 10 families actually decided to move out and relocate elsewhere from the village, because they don't want to be a part to the damage that people have done by simply saying, yes, we will allow this company to do this. So now this is just one example. There are another village where there is in a village on the western side of the island, in Ba, the village of Otua, there's black sand. The interest in black sand, it has the raw material for making magnesium. Making steel and others. So in Fiji, we today living with climate change, you also have to live with human-made disasters, and so for us now, it's how we educate, empower the vulnerable, rural villages, landowners, so that they become more aware of the impacts of extractive industries and look beyond the money that's put in front of them. We are doing starting a project on empowering, educating rural villagers and landowners so that they become more educated in this field. And also we've done some videos that we put on Facebook just to alert politicians and government things that they should know. The sad thing here is that we were very proud that Fiji took the leadership in the COP23, but we are not very good in keeping our environment safe and clean and protecting the environment. Our politicians are allowing these companies, to carry on a business that does harm to the environment. So our response is like a two-pronged response. One is to empower and educate rural dwellers, but at the same time, we are taking a very prophetic role in alerting government or making government aware of the destruction that these companies are doing. We put about 3 videos. We are going to make a report to the government along with those videos and also make an appointment with the government so that they know that we do not agree with what's happening in our villages. So I think those are, I want to close my presentation there. Basically, that again, to highlight two points: natural disaster, human-made disasters, and some of the initiatives that we are doing in the Archdiocese of Subang. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Archbishop Chong. So we now open the floor to any questions or comments or dialogue. And Jackie will facilitate this part.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, Archbishop Chong, for that fabulous input. I've been looking at the chat box to see any questions coming through, and I'd invite everybody at this point who hasn't yet put a question there, if there's one coming up for you, to please put it in the chat box at this point. So take a moment to do that, please. There's been a question from Charles Roux about writing new hymns that embody Laudato Si as a suggestion. Have you heard about this happening, Archbishop Chong, in Fiji at all at this point?
Like what, writing a hymn? Yeah?
I think that's the question, yeah.
Yeah, we have not written a hymn yet, but I have written a climate change song that's really based on the Laudato Si and my own and some of the things like that I've spoken about, like bringing in the voices of the island people into the center, speaking to the international community, speaking to the state, speaking to chiefs, and and that's available. That song we just posted up. We just did another good record, and it's on our Facebook at this time. So, but that is a good suggestion there to start composing new hymns.
Just on that, Jackie, if I might say something. Last night here in Brisbane, Archbishop Peter preached an evensong at the Anglican Cathedral, and there were a couple of hymns there that I had never struck before that had very strong and rich texts focusing upon the great themes of Laudato Si. So I don't know, I can't remember who wrote the text, but they were very good texts and contemporary. They wouldn't be suited to every culture, but it might be worth looking at those texts. We can forward them to someone.
Excellent, thank you. And Archbishop Chong, you mentioned a Facebook page. Is that your Archdiocesan Facebook page?
Yes.
Great. So perhaps if we send that link around for people as well to access what you're referring to. And I think Archbishop Mark, you referred to the Evensong last night, and we do have a running service page that's several pages long that will have those hymns on it, so I'm sure we can share that too.
Good.
Great. There's a question as well about the GCCM group and the people on this call who are also friends that want to support you and support also the Federation of Catholic Bishops' Conferences in Oceania. So it's quite a big question that doesn't necessarily mean we'll answer it here and now, but a question about how this group of people gathered today and going forward as a chapter that will meet regularly may be able to support you and others who are our neighbours in the Pacific. Any thoughts or comments on that you might have at this point would be fine to share.
Yes, we'll definitely welcome any the support in terms of personnel, resources, and finances. At the moment, I think we're meeting soon, I think next week, with an NGO in Fiji. They call themselves the Social Empowerment Education Program, and they work around the mining. So because their work is very similar to our Caritas Fiji work, we've decided we realize that we have to work together. We cannot be like working separately, because because in Fiji, churches and faith have a big space in people's minds. NGOs do not have the respect when they go around to the villages. So I've told the SIP group and to work with us, and once we develop this whole empowerment of the vulnerables in terms of and the victims of climate change and the victims of this unfavorable or environmentally unfriendly businesses, we will engage the ecumenical family and also the interreligious groups, so that another scope is brought. Because in this project, you are up against a big elephant, and that's the business world and the politicians. So the platform of the movement needs to be really broad.
Thank you. That's right, broad and coordinated to really bring that voice to bear in the world today. And I think identifying the ecumenical family and that movement of interfaith is critical as well. So by having a group like this that works together as Catholics across the region, we're able to then engage more effectively in the ecumenical dialogue and action and the interfaith when we're coordinated. So that's a hope for sure. And it's great to hear the programs you're doing, the work with the NGO group sounds really interesting on mining, and we can perhaps link in and support through some of that rather than something new. I think that's always a good place to start. So thank you for those suggestions. I'm just looking for some other questions that may have come through as well. Oh yes, there's reference to the Synod on the Amazon. As we know, this is the first synod process that's directly applying Laudato Si to a region of the world, with a focus on lifting up the voices of the people of that region and modelling integral ecology for us in church and the world and a way forward. The question is from Sean Cleary to all of us. He's keen to hear perhaps your hopes, Archbishop Chong, for our region in terms of that Synod on the Amazon, and anything further around that that can flow for the Pacific region and Oceania.
Yes. Unfortunately, around in Fiji, amongst church groups, we are quite low in terms of being able to address climate change and the environment in our churches. A Baptist minister did a research in his master's research in Fiji around how churches are engaging with ecology. Unfortunately, his research showed that not many of the churches are not engaging with the climate change. And it's only the few at the top. Catholic Church is, according to his research, is the most progressive along these lines, and for that I think we thank Pope Francis's letter. Also on so that's in Fiji with where churches are. With the rise of Pentecostal groups in the Fiji, this is a setback because Pentecostals are not very engaged in their theology with social justice and ecological justice. Their preaching and theology is very much on a very personalistic, individual salvation approach. And if you are a government in control, you like this kind of mentality because resistance is low. On the region, with our Conference of Bishops in the CPAC, we also are not really progressive in speaking together. We have yet to build a vision and understanding that we need to be contributing to the region in social and ecological justice. So this is a little concern for us, and it's part of the commitment, the project that is not only about the victims, not only about the politicians, but it's also about the church itself. So that's...
Jackie, just if I might, on the Synod on Amazonia is certainly not only about the Amazon, it's about the Church Universal. And there are, if you've only got to read the working document to see how many of the questions apply to other parts of the world, like Oceania, big time. Yeah. I had hoped that for that reason Archbishop Peter would be invited to the Synod as the president of the Bishops' Conferences of Oceania, but to my surprise he told me that he hasn't been. And I find that a bit disappointing, because it's important to see that this Amazon Synod isn't just about Latin America. It is about the whole church, and in fact the whole world. 1/3 of the world. Yeah. So anyway, I just throw that in.
No, thank you. That's fantastic. And at GCCM, we've been very aware that it is a call for the global church. It is a universal story.
Sean Cleary, I notice, is saying that Peter is constitutionally invited. Well, that may be true, Sean, I hope it is, but the Constitution hasn't yet yielded an invitation. And time's getting a bit short. We'll see anyway.
President of all regional conferences.
Yeah, but...
that's Paul Donoghue is the president of the...
Now, just
anyway, we'll see.
Thank you. And I can see other questions, but I'm mindful that we have some other things to cover in this call. So I wanted to just park it at that point and go back to Cheryl now, who I believe will introduce you, Archbishop Mark. So before we hear from the students as well. So thank you so much for the Q&A. The questions will not be lost. They're part of the chat, and that is all recorded as well for us to come back to at other times and explore. And this is very much the beginning of a wonderful conversation with you there. So thank you. Over to you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Archbishop Chong and Archbishop Coleridge. So our next speaker was born in Melbourne in 1948 and was ordained priest in St. Patrick's Cathedral in Melbourne in 1974. He taught scriptures in Melbourne after studying sacred scriptures at the Pontifical Biblical Institute, and after his doctoral studies in Rome, he returned to teach in Melbourne, where he was eventually made Master of Catholic Theological College. In 1997, he was invited to work in the Vatican Secretariat of State. He returned to Australia later on, and in 2006 was appointed as Archbishop of Canberra and Goulburn Archdiocese, and in 2012, he was made Metropolitan Archbishop of Brisbane. I will hand you over now to Archbishop Coleridge.
Thanks very much, Cheryl. I'll try to be brief because there are many voices here to be heard, not just bishops' voices. In all of this, my concern has been more and more to help establish a distinctively Christian voice in the whole debate. Bishop Ken Howard, my auxiliary bishop here on Saturday night, was in a parish and preached on the season of creation, and he had a lady come around after Mass and chide him, saying, I didn't come to Mass to hear a sermon on climate change. Now, there's the problem, because a lot of people think this is only about economics and politics, and what right have bishops or anyone in the church, for that matter, got to do dabbling in what belongs properly to politicians and economists and business people. Well, the fact is this belongs to the whole human family. If the Pope talks about a common home, it presumes that we are a family. And that's the great issue that affects all of us. So one of the extraordinary contributions of Pope Francis in Laudato Si is that from the highest authority, he has given us a distinctively Christian voice and a profoundly biblical voice, I can say. In other words, he's not speaking as a politician or an economist or an activist or a lobbyist, any of that. He's speaking as a witness to biblical truth and to the truth of the Catholic Church. Because if any institution on the face of the earth can speak about radical interconnectedness, it is the Catholic Church at her best. So I'm not surprised that the Catholic Church instinctively gets involved with this issue, because interconnectedness is at the heart of the Catholic experience of Christianity. So we need a distinctively Christian voice, we need a distinctively biblical voice, and we also need a distinctively contemplative voice, because some wonderful studies are showing now that our engagement, genuine engagement with integral ecology has roots that go down into the contemplative traditions of Christianity. So I think that's our great task entrusted to us by the Holy Spirit, to offer the world humbly but insistently a distinctively Christian, biblical and contemplative voice, because no one else will provide that, and without it all we're left with is ideology and politics. The other thing that has struck me is that here in Australia, the moral authority of the bishops and of the church generally has been, in the words of a politician I spoke to the other day, smashed. Now, it seems to me we might move towards a new kind of authority not power, but a new kind of authority if we can really engage distinctively in this whole area of integral ecology. It is one of the areas where we have an opportunity, where doors are closed to us elsewhere on some of the more predictable issues. In this area, I think we have an opportunity, and I think Pope Francis, under the influence of the Holy Spirit, has opened the door in the most remarkable way. So he's given us the lead, I think, again, under the influence of the Holy Spirit. It's all connected with his talk about synodality in the church. It's connected to the plenary council. In other words, ecological conversion is to go more deeply into the experience of interconnectedness, not only certainly with God, but with each other, with the whole of the created world. So we are being called into a new experience of interconnectedness, and in that sense, a new experience of what it means to be the Catholic Church. That's enough from me, I think, Cheryl.
Thank you very much, Archbishop Coleridge. And we took note of the different voice, the Christian voice, the biblical voice, contemplative voice. I really think that we should go into all our work, and even in GCCM. So we also have with us today a group of students from St. Paul's College, and they are led by teacher John. I will turn you over to the students of St. Paul's College from Manly.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Your Graces, and to all those present at this meeting. Thank you for your invitation for us to speak about our long-term program, Laudato Si, Finding God in Our Common Home. This project began as a partnership between the Catholic Schools Office, our Sustainability Officer, our RE staff, the college itself, the ICANN movement and the youth ministry wanting to bring Laudato Si to life for our students and to provide an opportunity for change. For a number of years now, many of our reflection days had centred around Laudato Si, and we wanted our students to gain a deeper understanding and appreciation of Pope Francis's encyclical And for Change. I was fortunate enough in 2015 to travel to Rome after having completed a master's unit on ecology theology to gain a deeper understanding of Laudato Si, and was invited to speak with other young leaders of other faiths to discern what this meant for them in their communities. What the conference in Rome assured me was that living Laudato Si was urgent and personal responsibility and commitment that must be individually made so that a metanoia can occur. And it's only through formation of the heart, through ecological literacy and a theological and moral necessity, that we can begin to engage and enable others to implement and sustain transformation. Over to you, boys.
Your Graces, living Laudato Si, finding God in our common home has taught us many things. To begin the unit, we spent time out in our school grounds, praying and observing gratitude for our beautiful and unique surroundings right here along the harbour in Manly. This is part of us understanding our and forming an intimate connection to place. Our group through the process decided to focus on greening and biodiversity, and in particular, we have learned how severe deforestation is, especially for a generation and subsequent generations. We do not have much time to fix this world problem, but we are hopeful to make a difference now before it's too late. In our common home, we have many people who do not know about deforestation around the world, and this is definitely impacting climate change. In our country, Australia, we have chopped down over half of our trees in 200 years. How staggering is that statistic? Without trees, we will have less oxygen, as seen in China, as students need to wear face masks to go to school. It is possible that the community that we live in right now would experience this in our lifetime. Trees give us the gift of living, and we are not using it in the correct way. Unfortunately, we also have adapted to abusing our environment, and this change must stop. We need to pause and think about what we are doing to the planet. Your Grace, we understand that in Philippines has become a law that students must plant trees in order to graduate, and we think this is a great move that should be adopted globally.
Our project has involved examining Laudato Si and working with the ICANN and spending time thinking about where change was needed in our community here at St. Paul's. We participated in a reflection day, which gave us an Aboriginal perspective of our local area and how they had been great custodians of the land for 60,000 years. We spoke to Mr. Rouse, our RE teacher, and Mrs. Catherine Judd, our sustainability officer. And after much dialogue, we chose a campaign to save our trees. We chose this as this is a major problem in our world. Constantly, trees are being cut down, so we thought people are clearly not thinking or are putting profit before the common good. We need trees to survive. When people cut down trees, they are clearly not thinking of the side effects. This led us to our project of planting trees on the college site. We first thought that this could help educate people about the significance of trees. We are planting a tree which is good for the environment, and we are educating and making people aware. Then we moved on to our planting, which was supported by both the school and council. Several trees were planted, and we had lots of help from people in all year groups. This was a step forward for us, as we had just had people help out and understand the significance of trees. We have then found out about the statistics of trees being cut down, and this made us really realise how much is needed to do in our efforts to save our trees. We then decided to keep sharing our experiences. We made a presentation and we had some very significant statistics. Currently, we are presenting our presentation to the whole school. We learnt that making the statistics personal, that's what people respond to. How is what I am going to say affect me? That's what draws people in.
So this new unit was a collaborated effort, but was primarily produced by one of our specific teachers, Mr. Ben Rouse, with the contributions of many parties, which began with examining the revelation of God, and students learnt about the 6 key areas affecting us today. The unit was prepared for Year 7 students who may have a very limited understanding of Catholicism. The unit focused on St. Francis's reminder that our common home is like a sister with whom we share our life, and a beautiful mother who opens her arms to sharing the process with our community and planting those trees and celebrating this process. We opted to use ICANN, which focuses on student agency and autonomy in the direction in which the students wanted to take their campaign. There were many other projects that focused on water, waste, wellbeing and energy. A major part of this unit was empowering our students to become animators, to do what they are doing today, to spread the word and to make those connections. Finally, I just wanted to add a quick note that as a parent to 5 children aged between 8 and 18, that I will be taking my children to the Climate March on September the 20th in Sydney.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been absolutely wonderful to hear about your work as a teacher at St. Paul's, and beautiful to hear from the students about their projects, what they're learning and what they hope to achieve. It's very inspirational for all of us, and we know it's from these seeds that great work can grow. Thank you very much. I'd now like to open for some more dialogue, and I noticed that there were some questions asked earlier which would come in at this point, but if you have anything you'd like to comment on or share, please do put it in the chat box at this time. So a question that came earlier from Bridget Crisp was to Archbishop Mark, asking, what training are you giving to priests and seminarians on this issue and Laudato Si to give impetus to the parish communities?
Well, I saw that question before it came up on the screen, Jackie. And I think it's a very important question because there's a lot more to the church than priests. But if they're going to exercise any kind of leadership in the church, and it's not just we need people to say Mass, but we need leadership beyond that as well. And this is a critical issue. Now, to tell you the truth, I can't answer the question in detail, but I'm going to find out. And I thought that when I saw Bridget's question on the screen, I will inquire at the seminary here and just what exactly is being done. Because again, this is not some wacky little hobby for those who are interested. This takes us to the very heart of the gospel, in fact. And so it's got to be an element that infuses the whole program of seminary training. The other thing I was thinking before when I saw the question was, we are in the process of shaping a new, what they call a ratio. In other words, a basic program of seminary formation. And one of the things I'm going to do is go back and have a look at the draft ratio, just to make sure that there is a proper attention to all the things that are raised by the Pope in Laudato Si, and that these future priests understand that we're talking about something that touches upon every aspect of the Church's life, not just this aspect or that, but the whole of what we are seeking to be and do as the Church. So thank you, Bridget, for the question.
Absolutely, and thank you for your response. That's really encouraging to hear, that when a basic program's being revised, this is the chance to get in at the ground level of that, so that creation is lifted up throughout the whole story for the seminarians. So that's wonderful. Incidentally, I'll be staying at the seminary tonight after the event at ACU, so I don't know who I'll meet there, but I look forward to that.
Well, I'll warn them, Jackie.
Give them a bit of a heads up. That'd be lovely. And I've got a couple of other questions that have been coming through. So Joseph Rass, Catholics are always returning to the table of the Eucharist and the Word. What does climate change mean for a community that gathers every Sunday? Should we take that question now? And the next part of it is, what's preventing the bishops from crafting another Eucharistic prayer to be used during the season of creation? Thanks for those questions.
Yeah, just to start with the second bit, that's not a bad question. In fact, it was never suggested, and I certainly didn't think of it, but it's one to perhaps put in the memory bank, because this won't be the only season of creation, but we may well need, Charles Roux was asking before about hymn texts. Well, we may also need liturgical texts, but the liturgy is always catching up a bit breathless with, where the Church is on the journey. But it's something that, now that the Pope has said that bishops' conferences have got more freedom to move liturgically than we had, that might be something that could be explored. New texts of some kind that might be used during the season of creation. So that's another one that I'll put in my memory bank, and as president of the conference I can mention it to Bishop Pat O'Regan of Sale, who is in charge of our liturgical commission. Good thought.
Wonderful.
Bishop Ken, who's just behind me, is also on that. So he's taking notes furiously and will be part of the discussion as well. And he's a liturgist.
Wonderful. Well, that's a great combination to have in that group with Pat O'Regan, who's very supportive of Laudato Si as well. So that's terrific. I'm conscious of time. I know we're moving towards the top of the hour wherever you are, and that's when we need to close. I really want to thank everyone for being part of this conversation. And I think there's an opportunity for us to continue it on a regular basis for the participants, and to invite in speakers who can assist us on the journey that we can keep collaborating with and growing this movement that becomes more embedded with ecological conversion as Church, and also that we each embody this in increasingly more meaningful ways. So Cheryl, I'd like to pass it back to you at this point, just in terms of time, in case we need to cover some of those logistical things before the closing prayer with one of the beautiful students, Jet, at St. Paul's.
we'd like to ask everyone at this point whether you would like to have a regular meeting or a regular dialogue, say monthly or every quarter. So it depends on your time. And we'd like to suggest, if so, we'd like to suggest the last Wednesday of each month for the dialogue. So kindly let us know on chat if you're okay with this. Okay. So okay, most of the responses are positive. So yes, we will be sending out our invitation for the next call next month. Thank you. And we'd like to call in Jet to do our closing prayer for us. But before that, we'd like to again thank everyone. Thank you, Archbishop Chong. Thank you, Archbishop Coleridge, for the very fruitful discussion, for sharing with us your thoughts, your feelings. And I would like to thank the students of St. Paul's. We do hear you loud and clear that you wanted us to give you a chance to live in a beautiful world such as what those who were before, who have experienced, those who have come before us. So we hear you loud and clear. So now we'd like to call in Jet to do our closing prayer.
In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Creator of life, the earth is full of your creatures, and by your wisdom you make them all. At your word, the earth brought forth planets yielding seed of every kind of trees, and every kind bearing fruit. The waters teemed with swarms of living creatures of every kind, and the world was filled with every kind of winged bird, walking animal, and creatures that creep upon the ground. Mountains, plains, rocks, and rivers shelter diverse communities. And all through the changing seasons, the Spirit renews cycles of life. During this season of creation, open our eyes to see the precious diversity that is all around us. Enlighten our minds to appreciate the delicate balance maintained by each creature. Inspire us to conserve the precious habitats that nature this web of life. In the name of the one who came to proclaim good news to all creation, Jesus Christ. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Spirit.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a wonderful call. I'd encourage you to stay connected through the GCCM newsletters and websites. If you haven't yet signed up to those, you'll receive regular updates. You'll be invited to all sorts of things, including training programs that are free and online about Laudato Si. We invite you to wholeheartedly continue to celebrate the season of creation right up to the 4th of October, St. Francis of Assisi's feast day. You may be interested in joining the climate marches on the 20th of September in your capital cities and towns. Please take along a message of faith if you can, so that people can see that you are engaged with this as a spiritual activity as well. So lots of love to everybody. Special thanks to Cheryl for joining the GCCM team and bringing us together. We really appreciate your wonderful and diligent work across Oceania and Asia. And God bless you and everyone. Thank you.
Salamat.
Salamat po.
Sige na, Cheryl.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.